All right, I actually was on the road and I tried to record a video about this, but since then, which is 2 days ago, and I just got home this morning, there have been new developments. So I want to go over some of the sports news over the past week or so, and really about why we're looking at the politicization of sports has actually backfired on the athletes and on the sports commissioners and team owners and the media and the sports media. So, getting straight into it, the NBA has had the worst ratings in, I believe, recent memory. Um, so, the playoffs in 2020 have just been atrocious. They've been they've been crazy, and apparently, so this is from Sports Illustrated. So this is just one example. And I know somebody are going to be like, well, what about the fact that, this is just game one and whatever? The Eastern Conference Finals have dropped 27% in the NBA, the worst total since 2007. And by the way, this is before. So the Western Conference Finals apparently, I think it was on Tuesday night, the Western Conference Finals were set because the LA Clippers lost their Western Conference semifinals matchup against Denver, and that eliminated the big matchup that everybody was building up for, the LA Clippers versus the LA Lakers. Now it's going to be the LA Lakers versus the Denver Nuggets. And nobody really cares about the Nuggets so much. I'm actually going to be rooting for them anyway because I've always been kind of a Laker hater. But even if and I think everybody would agree that the Lakers are probably going to win. If the Lakers get into the NBA Finals, but the Heat make it on the Eastern side, it will be a huge disaster for the NBA. Nobody really cares about LeBron James having a matchup with his old team, the Heat, because the Heat are really a lot of unknown players. They'll probably be one of the more, I guess, strange finals matchups because you're going to have on the one side the Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. By the way, I haven't been watching any of these games. I think I watched, one quarter of NBA this entire year. It was a Lakers versus Rockets matchup, I think like a week and a half ago because I happened to be at the gym and the game was on one of the screens. So I've not been watching, and I don't think that I watched last year until the actual finals themselves. So my personal interest in the NBA has certainly sunk since, of course, LeBron left Cleveland the second time. And I would say this: the NBA had some of the best. It had a great model for many, many years. And who built that model? Everybody is going to say Michael Jordan, and I agree that Michael Jordan took it to the highest level, but originally started to really build up in the early 80s. And the reason it built up was because you had matchups that really embodied real competition between different parts of America. You had the LA Lakers with Magic Johnson, the Showtime Lakers, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy. Who else was on that team? It escapes me, but in any case, there was that was a team that was one of the most electrifying in the world, and it certainly expanded the NBA's profile across the world because people wanted to watch the LA Lakers against their top rivals, which were the Boston Celtics with Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and a number of other people, Danny Ainge. That was the team that was more of, I guess you could call it the blue collar mentality. Even though Boston is a little bit more of a baseball town. But in any case, the Boston LA rivalry, which had already been strong in the 60s, what became really a draw for television in the 80s because the earlier generation, the Bill Russell Celtics versus the Wilt Chamberlain Lakers, had not been on TV. The NBA wasn't on live TV until the 80s, and I think before that it was on delay, so there was a tape delay, and probably back in the Russell versus Wilt Chamberlain days, it wasn't even on TV at all. So you would have to probably attend a game even to understand what the hell was going on and to really get the experience of the game. Or you would probably have to listen to it on the radio, and even if it's on the radio, it's not on the radio everywhere, as opposed to what was the most dominant sport of the 60s and 70s, football and to some extent baseball still. Now, the NBA, of course, under Magic and Larry, started to really take off, and that definitely um, took supersonic flight in the 90s with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was he was the first sports megastar. He was the first global sports icon. Okay, everybody around the world who thought about basketball, you thought about Michael Jordan. And yes, are there countries where maybe basketball didn't leave as much of an imprint? I'm sure, but Michael Jordan, with his sneakers and with the Gatorade and with the Nike merchandise, the Air Jordan merchandise, he was the real breakthrough person for the NBA and for sports in general around the world, turning it into a 24-hour experience and not just some sort of, I guess, niche interest for people in the United States. And that was the real platform on which people like Kobe Bryant, who I think was an amazing player, I'm not going to lie, and people like LeBron James built upon it. Now, Kobe Bryant was very smart in that, maybe because of some of the controversy he had over the Denver rape allegation, which I never believed, he decided, well, I'm going to stick to basketball. I'm going to stick to just focusing on the sport, focusing on my professional obligations, and not really get into other aspects of the world. LeBron James has largely, because, first of all, LeBron James has never had a real personal scandal. So you could say that LeBron James, while he is a superstar and many considered him for a long time to be the big successor to Jordan, the person who would be the real heir apparent, pardon the pun, he became really this, I would say he was an imposter. Unlike Michael Jordan, from the beginning he was crowned King James and people behaved. And I remember, because I lived here in Cleveland, I was going into high school when he was already a national name because of his high school career at, I think it was St. Vincent St. Mary's High School over in Akron, which is a Catholic private school. In any case, so LeBron James was already being touted as the next Jordan when he leaped from high school to the NBA. This was something, obviously there have been other people who have made the leap, Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant. And I think that Kobe Bryant does get, Kobe Bryant, again, I was never a fan of the team, but he was undoubtedly one of the greatest he was one of the greatest basketball players ever, and never played in college, and neither did LeBron James or Kevin Garnett. And therefore, this was the real departure, because Michael Jordan did have to go through college. He did have to win a championship. He did have to go through a lot of very difficult teams in order to make it to the championship game. Remember, when he started out, the Bulls were a rundown nobody franchise. Same thing with LeBron James in Cleveland. But Michael Jordan built the Bulls during the 80s into a respectable team, and then Phil Jackson came along with the other talent. If you watch Last Dance, I know some of you might have watched it. If you still have Netflix, I recommend you do. Last Dance shows that they took together a lot of different and diverse talents. People like Steve Kerr and Scottie Pippen, Ron Harper, Bill Wennington, John Paxson, Tony Kukoc. Who else? There was Horace Grant. All those players really, they defined the complete team. And that's how they won 6 championships. LeBron James, he won his championship a different way. He went over to Miami. Miami already had, once he arrived from Cleveland, they already had a very significant foundation, and people like Dwayne Wade, who already had a championship. Udonis Haslem, people forget. Chris Anderson, I think, was already there when he got there, or they signed him around that time. The Birdman. And then, of course, they brought in Chris Bosh along with him, and other people like the enforcer, Joel Anthony. So while people, obviously we're not going to argue that LeBron James built the NBA to a very high level for his era, but it was already very, very high under Jordan, and I would argue that it had been higher under Jordan, and then it had sort of tapered off after the lockout, and Kobe sort of sustained it for a little while, and then there was the whole ref controversy with the Sacramento Kings series, if you remember that, in 2002, and then Tim Donaghy getting exposed. So LeBron James sort of brought it a little higher from that sort of controversial era. But nevertheless, I would say that by winning a title with the Heat, which was a team that was very artificially produced, and then winning, first of all, he lost the first time he was with the Heat. He won 2 titles, and then he lost again at San Antonio. That was still a great level of competition. He comes back to Cleveland, wins a championship with Cleveland after they lost a series against Golden State the first attempt. That was a great matchup, but that matchup is now gone. The Golden State dynasty is gone, and you have all of the talent in the NBA in a lopsided formation on the West Coast. So all of the talent is basically located mostly in teams like the Clippers and the Lakers, and therefore the television ratings are just collapsing. And that's besides all of the political issues, which you, of course, probably know about. So I know that this might be sort of burying the lead, but the political stuff is only a small element of why I believe the NBA is simply, I don't think it's a small element, but it's only one part of a tapestry of just a declining interest in the league, because nobody really cares about these guys, even if they didn't have the BLM slogans and, both on their jerseys and on the court. Even if those things were not there, I would say that the league is in decline. The interest is certainly tapering off. They are in need of a new superstar for a new generation because LeBron James is growing old. And who's it going to be? Kawhi Leonard, I don't think is, I think he's an amazing player, but I don't think he's going to be the superstar who redefines the generation, the next generation of basketball players. Now on to the next story. So this is in regards to the NFL. So I only watched one game this weekend. It was at the gym. Like, I made sort of a commitment. I would only watch the Dallas games, and then if I could, I'd watch them at the gym. So at least I'm doing something productive while watching them, because in and of themselves, it's not really worth it. But I can tell you that the NFL, and you probably don't have to hear this just from me, but the NFL is in serious, serious trouble. And we're talking about a league that is basically, they've embraced politics. They've tried to sort of thread the needle on this, but they've embraced politics to a certain degree while also trying to, appease the fans who don't want the politics. But there was the linking of arms in Kansas City a week ago. I think, it was a week ago today. And they were booed by the 10,000 or so fans that were in attendance, and it was an overwhelming boo. People were not having it, right? So that's first thing. Then there was the kneeling for the national anthem by Baltimore while standing for the so-called Black national anthem, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." Is it any surprise then? So you had Baker Mayfield at some point come out and say, well, I guess I'm going to stand for the national anthem. And why not? Because these athletes know, Baker Mayfield knows, even though I think he's said things that are sympathetic to BLM, he knows that the more he virtue signals while his team is complete garbage, people are going to start calling for his head, and they already are starting to call for his head. Mike Florio, who is certainly, he's on the far left of the sports spectrum, right? Among sportscasters, he's very far to the left. He was one of the Corona Bros, as Clay Travis calls them, and he is asking whether Baker Mayfield could eventually be benched, and I don't think that it's really out of the question, because you have Case Keenum on the roster, who was Kevin Stefanski's quarterback over in Minnesota, and Kevin Stefanski is their new coach. So you could see basically a guy who is already losing his job. I believe that one of the reasons that he did not kneel is because he doesn't want the trickle of boos to become just this thundering roar against him, especially because I think this weekend they're supposed to play Cincinnati at home. You're supposed to have Joe Burrow, the number 1 pick of the draft, come in. And I think if the Bengals win this game and you see some players kneeling on for the anthem on the Cleveland side, you're going to see basically a huge drop in both viewing audience and attendance. Even with the attendance being limited as it is, it might be even lower because people will not want to go, because people here, I can tell you in Ohio, are not very thirsty to watch these political athletes. Okay, and that gets me to a different issue. The fact is that when you get booed in person, that's one thing. But when you have some of these players, I think in Baltimore there was no attendance, because in Maryland there's no attendance at these football games. And then you if you have no attended if you have no paid attendance, okay, that's one thing. You lose revenue from that. That's loss A. Then if you have at home less people watching, this is a NFL suicide pact right now. I mean, NFL ratings are just cratering right now. And that's actually the language that Trump used. But even here from Sportsnot, they say NFL ratings for Monday Night Football week 1 doubleheader crash. Okay. Oops. I think I just allowed notifications. And it says NFL Week 1 ratings in decline, culminating on Monday Night Football. According to Showbuzz Daily, the doubleheader on Monday night represented a major downtick in viewership from the same time slots of a season ago. Steelers at Giants. This game drew 10.8 million viewers on ESPN, down 21% from the early game opener during Week 1 of the 2019 NFL season. The Titans of the Broncos drew 7.7% million viewers, down a whopping 38% from the late game last year. So you're just seeing this dramatic plunge in ratings. And then the Cowboys game, which, by the way, I thought was just so frustrating as a fan. But I'm not going to belabor the point as a Cowboys fan, because I know many of you don't want to watch at all. But there was a 16.1% drop in viewership from last season's opener. So that is a major development. And I know that the Cowboys had only one player kneel. I don't know how many people kneeled on the Rams or if anybody kneeled. But the bottom line is this. When you have people who can't attend games, but they're still not watching from home, that is a signal that people are rejecting. They are rejecting the politicization of sports, and they don't want it to become this just like all the other entertainment, like video games, like movies, TV shows, garden shows, whatever it is. They don't want things to be political if they're trying to find some recreation, right? This is something that Jimmy Dore would reject, and I respect some of Jimmy Dore's opinions, not all of them, but he's totally wrong on that. People don't want their sports mixed with their politics. On the positive side, so this is something that happened while I was gone, and this is why I'm making this video now. The Big Ten is back. Okay, the Big Ten was canceled, and this is great news for people like me, a huge Buckeyes fan, because this was something that actually Trump says Biden ad prompted his intervention on Big Ten football. I saw the ad, and that's actually what got me into gear. It doesn't matter because apparently he said that, but the fact is that Biden was trying to say, because of Donald Trump and because of his COVID response, there's not going to be football. Well, guess what? There is football now in the Big Ten, and there should have always been football. It was political bullshit to begin with, and everybody knows it. And it was thanks to the intervention of that president, Mr. Trump, and his pressure on Kevin Warren, the president of the Big Ten, and the support of viewers and listeners of the Fox Sports radio show Outkick the Coverage by Clay Travis, mainly. He was the big lobbyist for this, that the the season got rescheduled and put back on the calendar. And I think that this victory, this is something I said in the recording, but I never uploaded it. This is something that is going to be a major talking point going forward. Trump is going to say, well, Biden blamed me for football being canceled, but he didn't really want to do anything about it. He just wanted to point fingers. And yet meaning President Trump, I did do something because it was important enough for me. I knew it was important enough for the viewers. I knew it was important enough for the citizens. And I know some people might say when they watch this video, they're going to be like, who cares about the football? People are out of work. And I personally, I'm working a part-time job right now when I have an advanced degree in engineering, and there's many things that I'd like to do with my career besides what I'm doing right now. I can tell you that this is immensely powerful. It's immensely important for people in the states like Wisconsin, Michigan State, so Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and here in Ohio. When you have teams like Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, all of them can play now. It is very important to people, even if you think it's dumb and people should be more focused on the more important things in life, which I would agree with you. But our culture is as it is, but that's about it. I do have other stuff to do, but I want to thank you, and I hope that next week I might have some other videos to talk about. Not so much this weekend. It is the Jewish New Year, so I am not going to be able to make videos until at least Monday, if not later. But other than that, please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com and on Library. So BitChute and Library for the videos so that you never miss a notification. Those will come straight to your email. Also on Subscribestar if you want to donate, and on Gab as well as Parler. You can find me at those addresses that you see here. And have a great day.